All right. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to all of you who are watching live. We are so thrilled to be back for our kind of August series of Make a Difference in the Life of a Child. Um, and this series is really all about just giving you a general overview of what it might be like to become a South Carolina foster parent, because we know that for so many of us, we don't know very much about foster care before we jump in. So my name is Kaylee, and I am the director of Care to Foster, which is an initiative of fostering great ideas. I am a foster parent myself, but we are so thrilled to have Melissa join us today. And she is a foster parent, and she's going to be sharing some of her experience. So Melissa, would you mind just introducing yourself to everybody?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Kelly, and I am a foster parent located in Pickens County in the upstate. I've been fostering for a little over 2 years now. I am fostering with a private agency. Miracle Hill is the agency that I went with. And so far, I've had 19 children in my home over the last 2 years.
Wow. That is amazing. So we are just so grateful for your perspective, Melissa, especially now, coming from a private agency, as DSS is not currently licensing non-relative foster families. New families do have to choose a private agency, and there are so many wonderful options all over the state. Miracle Hill is one of those options. So we likely will have many families that have questions about fostering with a private agency. So thank you so much for being with us. And we'll go ahead and get started. So, like I said, my name is Kaylee, and I'm from Care to Foster, and we try our best to help find more great foster families for the children of South Carolina. We do not license foster families, but we try to help new families or interested families find the agency that's going to be the best fit for them. And Melissa is part of our Share Fostering group, as well as being one of our Share Fostering ambassadors. One of our goals is that once you get connected with an agency and you start the process of becoming a licensed foster parent, is that you would be supported and we could help you find extended community, because that can be so valuable for new foster parents. So today, really, we're going to be trying to answer your most commonly asked questions, just give you a really general overview of what it's like to become a foster family in South Carolina, and that starts with choosing an agency and the licensing process. There are so many nitty-gritty questions about getting started. The best place to ask those questions is always going to be the licensing agency that you choose, or talking to multiple licensing agencies. So we're not going to answer all of the nitty-gritty questions today, but we will try to answer some of those basic questions, as well as Melissa's going to share from her experience what you might expect as a foster family, and we'll provide you with some resources to help take some next steps that are right for you, because everyone has a little bit of a different journey, a little bit of a different path. Melissa and I have shared lots of stories together with our other foster parent friends. And, while there's definitely some commonalities, everyone has a different path that they take to get licensed. So, Melissa, will you tell us just a little bit about how you got started as a foster parent, kind of what sparked in your heart that moved you to become a new foster parent?
So for me, it was a calling. I felt like I had a calling on my life to work with kids, to help kids that were in need. I had done missions, world missions before, and been to orphanages in other countries, and I really felt like I needed to be involved with that type of ministry here at home. So I started out actually as a guardian ad litem for about 8 years in Pickens County. And I know we'll talk about this more later, but I felt like that was something I could do as a single person. I really thought that I would wait to foster until maybe I got married. And the older that I got, I decided that I probably should stop waiting and just do what I thought was what I really wanted to do, which was to love on these kids. So about 2 years ago, you can't be a guardian and a foster parent here in South Carolina. So I stopped being a guardian and started the process to get licensed to be a foster parent.
And we'll talk more about what a guardian is, Melissa. You can share with that kind of at the end, as we'll talk about some other ways that you can advocate for children in care if this isn't a time for you to be fostering. But there definitely is a huge need for more foster families. We know that there is a gap between the number of foster families and the number of homes needed for children in care in South Carolina. There are over 4,000 kids in South Carolina's foster care system and only about 2,800 foster families, which means there's a gap of just about 1,600 families, because every child deserves to live in a family type setting. And we really care about that for our children, because one of the things I always say is there is no such thing as somebody else's children. We all belong to each other. And we fully recognize that all of the problems in the child welfare system will not be solved just by having enough beds. But what a great place to start, that every child could find a family that was a good fit for what they needed as soon as it was recognized that they would need a non-relative foster family. So we're talking about foster care today, and we're going to talk about specifically becoming a foster parent. We'll also look at adoption really quickly, but for those of us who maybe haven't had any experience with foster care before considering becoming a foster family, we just want to make sure that we're giving a good definition of what that is. Melissa, were you familiar with foster care at all kind of before you started looking into becoming a guardian and then a foster parent?
I really wasn't. I mean, I had heard of foster care, but I didn't know anybody in the foster care arena when I became a guardian. When I became a guardian, there was a guy, I worked for Clemson, and I worked in grants at the time. There was a man who was raising money for the Guardian Ad Litem program, and he actually came and asked me to help him look for grants to help support the kids in Pickens County for Guardian Ad Litem. And so that was really my first introduction to the Guardian Ad Litem program and how they helped the kids. And so it really sparked my interest for, I helped him a little bit, but decided that I really wanted to be involved personally, not just in the business end of that.
Yeah, I know for me, growing up, I definitely, at least I don't think I knew anyone that was in foster care themselves. I didn't know any foster families. So, really, once I met a foster family as an adult, it was a coworker. That was my first introduction to what foster care was like, and it kind of blew my mind that there was this huge social issue, this huge need right in my own backyard, and I was completely unaware of it. Um, and I learned so much along the way. Really, my perspective changed so much the more I learned about the needs and about what foster care really is. So, children are placed in foster care through no fault of their own. This is not because a child has misbehaved or done something wrong. Really, the family cannot currently care for them well or safely. There has not yet been another family member identified for the child to live with, the child or children. Sometimes and often there are multiple siblings within a family. But foster parents are kind of that temporary placeholder, this family that provides temporary care for the children in their home. They're standing in the gap for a family while that family works towards reunification, which is often called a treatment plan. The goal is always the child returning to their biological family as long as it's safe. And that really takes a change of perspective and a change of heart for many families that get into foster care with the goal of adoption. Um, Although there is a huge need for families, for permanent families, for children that are legally free for adoption. And that's what we're going to talk about really quickly. So, our focus today is on becoming a foster family, standing in the gap temporarily for a child or children while their family work to become a safe place for them to return. So foster care is temporary. The goal is reunification. Almost always that will be the initial goal. In South Carolina, we do not have an official program called Foster to Adopt. You'll hear that term a lot, and a lot of families will say we're getting into foster care to adopt, but really there is not an official foster to adopt program in South Carolina. Of course, we do know that there are needs for children to be placed in forever families, into loving, caring, safe, permanent families once they are legally free for adoption. And you can adopt from foster care. So that would be separate. There's a foster care pathway and an adoption pathway. And sometimes they overlap and you can do both and you can switch programs, but they are separate. So you can straight adopt from foster care. The largest need is for older children and teens and large sibling groups that need to be adopted together. But for families that are looking for other ways to add a child to their family, of course, there is domestic and international private adoption, which is just a little bit different. But again, today we're really going to be talking about becoming a foster parent, a temporary home for a child. So Melissa, you talked about becoming a guardian first because you were a single. Tell us a little bit about what some of your barriers were, or some of your concerns about becoming a foster parent, especially as a single person.
I think because as I became a guardian, my exposure to foster parents were either couples mostly. And a lot of times, if it was a couple, not always, but there was a stay at home mom maybe that was able to be this superstar mom. And, so it's overwhelming to think about that. And so as a single person who works full time, I really thought, how in the world am I going to do this? But I just really felt that urge that I should try. And, I won't say it's easy, but you have to find your support group. And I know we're going to talk about that some. You have to find your village, is what we call it a lot of times in foster care, that will come around you and support. And I found that through Miracle Hill, through my church, through my family, through friends, and through fellow foster parents, that we help each other out. When somebody gets a new placement, we scramble on their behalf, because it takes a lot of work to change, and get ready for a new kid, or multiple kids. So you have to work together and make the best of it sometimes.
For sure. So some of the most common barriers to fostering that we hear as we've talked to many families considering foster care. The first is, like Melissa said, many people considering foster care are married couples or, couples that are living together. And the question is, can I foster if my spouse is not on board? And with anything, we strongly encourage you to have hard conversations, to talk about your desire to foster, your motivation, to talk about your expectations, and really come to a common place, because foster care is hard. Single, married, no matter what, bringing new people into your home and into your family is going to add some additional stress. It's going to add some additional pressure to your relationships. And if nothing else, it's just going to change up your normal life. And so if you're not on the same page, that can be really challenging. But like we'll talk about later, maybe fostering's not for you right now if you can't get on the same page, but there's a lot that you can do. So that's really one of the first most common barriers we hear. One partner is interested in fostering and the other's just not quite there yet. The second barrier that we hear is, how is this going to impact my biological children or the permanent children that are already in my home? And the answer is yes, this is going to impact everyone in the home and everyone in your family. Children often have this, gargantuan task of being asked to share maybe their bedroom, their toys, their time with their parents, the TV remote, the dinner table. They are really inviting in a person into their life as much as the parents are inviting children into theirs. And so it is going to impact your children, but it largely we hear that the benefits to families is far outweighs the challenges. Many parents talk about foster care as a way to teach their children values and life lessons, to teach them to develop in them positive character traits that fostering offers, that almost nothing else can. And I would encourage you, we have invited many foster parents into this series with us. And our last one with Sarah Barr, she talked about the impact on her own children. And that's really powerful. So I'd encourage you to watch that as well if you have questions about the impact on your children. And
Kaylee, I don't have biological children myself, but, I have 5 nephews and a niece that I spend lots of time with. And it's really been inspiring to see how they have loved on these children, how each one they love on, that they really get attached to them as well. And it is hard on them, if a child, when a child goes to their family, but I have seen them develop, into these young adults that realize, that's best for them. And they still pray for those children and they still think about them and ask me if I, heard anything from them from time to time. So it has largely been a very positive impact on my nieces and nephews.
that's great to hear. I know that foster care, we don't currently have any biological children, but the children that are in our home have an immense impact on my parents that don't live with us. In fact, they live out of state. But because they are such an integrated part of our lives, they become a part of other people's lives. And so that moving on, really impacts so many people beyond just the people within your household. That's for sure. The final and most common barrier, and I always chuckle a little bit when I hear this, and Melissa, maybe you do too, but I would get too attached. How do you say goodbye to a child you love? What is your response when you get that question or that kind of response from someone that finds out that you're a foster parent?
That is definitely the most common thing that is said to me when I tell other people that I'm a foster parent. And, most of the time I say, you're right, you get really attached, but that's exactly what they need. These kids need someone who will take the time to get attached to them. They're in care for a reason because, they either were abused or neglected or, a situation happened that they were not getting that attention that they needed. And so they desperately need that attention. As an adult, I can deal with those things, and I just have to keep looking forward. I know that the need is so great that if one child goes home and they're able to be back with their family or, with a relative, if it's not with their parents, that there are so many other children that's going to give me another opportunity to get to know someone and get to love on someone else, and so you have to focus on the positive. There are times that I miss the kids, I miss the kids that were in my home, but I'm also too busy with the 2 little ones that I have now to think about it too much.
Right. And I often say, love does hard things. Saying goodbye is hard, but often as adults, we've done hard things before, and we can do it again. We have developed, or at least can develop those resiliency skills. We often have a support system. We have experience doing hard things. And because we love the children, we are overjoyed when there is positive permanency, when they are able to go back to their parents and they're so excited about it, or they get to go to grandma or an aunt. And especially when you've developed relationships with those people over time and you feel confident they're going to a good situation. Yes, there is sadness for you that they are leaving, but there is so much more joy for them, for the child and the family, that they have accomplished their goal, that they are being reunified. And there is joy in that. That to me trumps some of the hard things about saying goodbye. So, Melissa and I both said we didn't know much about fostering before we got started. So it is perfectly normal to have lots of questions. And it's even okay to have doubts. Ask your questions, express your doubts. The best way to learn about fostering is to talk to other foster parents, which is why we're so glad to have Melissa here today. And we continue to elevate foster parent voices because their experiences are valuable. And we would love to connect you with foster parents near you that you can just ask questions and learn more. Um, you know, Different families have different experiences and will have different answers to your questions. A great place to ask questions is also the foster care licensing agency that you choose. There are common forums where you can ask questions, like our Share Fostering group that's hosted by Care to Foster on Facebook. There are regional and state, national Facebook pages that you can join as well. But some of the most common questions about fostering that we hear, and we'll answer them just really quickly. Can can I afford to foster? Likely the answer to this is yes. There is no minimum income requirement. However, there are some things that you will need to provide, in your foster care licensing process that basically prove that you have enough money coming in to cover your basic expenses every month. Melissa, was that a concern that you had at all? The ability to care for additional children in your home?
I wasn't so much as worried about the day to day, but it was those one time expenses, the upfront kind of things. And, when I first started, I didn't know as much about foster closets or things like that where you could get supplies from when I first started fostering. But thankfully, again, I had a huge village that stepped in when they found out this was what I wanted to do. I kind of made it known as I started the process and some of the things that I would need. And I just had a flood of people who were willing to share with things with me that were just a really big blessing to help me get started.
Yeah. And there are financial assistance available for foster parents. I think the biggest ones that I often talk about are ABC vouchers for daycare if you're working full time or going to school full time. Um, Often I hear questions about insurance. Do the children get put on your medical insurance? And no, the children are provided with Medicaid as soon as they enter foster care. So you are not paying out of pocket for those doctor appointments and prescriptions and counseling and things like that. It is largely paid for. So, can I foster if I'm single? And the answer is yes. Melissa, maybe you can share a little bit with us now about some of the challenges of fostering while single. But single foster parents make some of the best foster parents.
Yeah, I think, the biggest challenge to fostering when you're single is that you don't have another built-in partner to say, hey, can you take the doctor appointment this time? Or can you take them here this time and switching off? And so having a flexible employer that allows me to be flexible with my schedule has really been a huge benefit in that, because a lot of times it does have to be the foster parent that is there for an appointment, but you can also work with DSS. I'm very upfront and clear with DSS when I accept a child. I am a single foster mom. I do work full time. So, I will need you to transport to visits, and, anything that you mandate, I'll need you to transport to that, because, I can't commit to that. So anything that I commit to, a doctor's appointment or a therapy that I have committed to, then I'm responsibility for making transportation arrangements for that. But DSS has been great to work with me on that, and they'll come pick the child up from daycare and bring the child back to either me or back to daycare from their visit. And so that's been a huge help. And some parents are able to do that because they don't work full time, but I'm not able to do that in my current situation. And DSS has been great to work with me on that.
Yeah. And Melissa answered the next question as well. Can I work full time in foster? And the answer is yes. But just like Melissa said, there are additional challenges to consider, your flexibility, your schedule, and for some families, taking on full time foster care is not possible with their work schedules. But there are things like emergency care or respite care, that families might consider offering if their schedules aren't quite as flexible, to receive full-time placements, and that's okay too. Can I foster if I don't own a home? And the answer is yes. Um, there are many foster parents that live in apartments, in townhouses, condos, homes that are rented or owned. You do not have to own, your home, but there are some standard requirements for homes to just be approved for safety, and you'll go through those health and safety inspections with the state fire marshal and with your licensing worker. So you do need to be able to meet those basic standards. And if you don't own your home, there might just be an additional level of working with, your landlord or your apartment complex, or whatever that may mean for you. But those are some of the questions that we get most often. Melissa, is there anything else that you get asked by people that are considering foster care?
Yeah, I mean, the most thing is just kind of how do you do it? That's the biggest question that I get. I do get questions about daycare, and I would say, one of the things I tell parents if they're interested is, if you haven't had children in daycare before, as soon as you start deciding, that yes, this is somewhere I want to pursue, you need to investigate and see what daycare options are available in your area. And, do they take vouchers or not? Because that is a huge expense. If you don't have a foster care in your area, or a daycare rather in your area that takes ABC vouchers, that's a large expense that is going to come out of your payment that you get from foster care, for board, or I think they're called board payments, right? And so, the voucher really helps. And so there's a list on the DSS website or on the voucher website, that I'm sure Care to Foster has a link to get you the information of which daycares do accept in your area. And you need to talk to other parents and their experiences about those daycares, and try to make those decisions early, because sometimes there's a waiting list and you want to start building relationship with those people.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Melissa. One of the questions we hear is, can I choose an age range, or give a preference for age range? And if you're accepting only younger children and daycare is a need for you, that's something to consider, because sometimes you're not going to be able to get immediately into, a daycare placement, but that might be a great reason to take school age children and older children. That is the greatest need. Again, older children, teens, and large sibling groups. For us, we started with 0 to 6, and quickly realized that for the time that we were in, the season that we were in, kind of towards the beginning, school age children that could immediately start and be registered for school, was really the way to go for us. Of course, now we are living in a pandemic where there is a lot of uncertainty. So it's really about thinking about your family, your schedule, your routines, and what is going to fit for you. And sometimes what you decide at first may not be the best fit, and you are always able to adjust. And that brings me to our last common question, which is, what if a child is placed in my home and it just isn't working out? I think Melissa and I have both experienced times where certainly placements are challenging. And as you're in a transition, you're trying to learn what the child needs and how you can meet those needs. But sometimes it is clearly beyond what you can offer. When you have exhausted every resource and sought every service and consulted caseworkers and therapists or professionals, whoever might be involved, you know, you are not expected to keep a child in your home if it is an unsafe situation, and you can request for a child to be moved, and other placement arrangements to be made. Now, of course, that is not ideal. That is not best for the child, and you know, but you can always say no to a placement. When they call and ask you to receive a placement, you do not have to say yes. And if it is truly not working out, you have the right as the foster parent to request for that child to be moved, although that can be painful both for the child and for the parent. Melissa, do you have anything to share about that?
Yeah, I have had to make that call before, and it is a really painful process. I mean, it was hard on me, and it was hard on the kids. In the end, it was best for those kids. And for me, it was about getting them somewhere they could get the services that they needed that they were not able to get in my home. And so, and it was just more than I could handle. And it's better to ask for help when you're in over your head than it is to drown. And so you have to ask for help when you know that you're in over your head. And Miracle Hill reached out, and DSS reached out, and we tried to work it out to where those children could stay in my home. And it just didn't work out, but I think there's a lot of fear in that. For sometimes, people are afraid if I ask for this child to be moved, they won't give me more kids, or there's fear sometimes in that. And that has not been my experience. Everyone was very understanding. Everyone was very making sure. And I think that we talked about private agencies. That was one thing that I know my private agency really wanted to make sure that I, as a person, was taking care of myself. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. And that was really a big part of that for me.
Right. Thanks for sharing that, Melissa. So, and that's a great segue to talking about the foster care licensing process. And again, this is just a general overview. We can answer some more specific questions outside of this webinar, but really we want to talk about the basics and where to start. So once you've decided that you are interested in fostering, your very first choice is to decide between regular foster care and therapeutic foster care. And the difference really simply is, and most families do start with regular foster care. This is where typically children will enter foster care. And of course, there has been trauma. They possibly have experienced abuse or neglect. So there are going to be challenges with behavior, but there has not been a diagnosed or determined issue that needs additional services or additional therapies beyond what is typical. A therapeutic foster family has agreed to take on children that need a higher level of care, and there are different levels of therapeutic care, starting with level 1. And really these kids just maybe need some additional services, need some additional interventions, and the family has agreed and is trained specifically to care for those additional needs. If you have experience in healthcare, in working in special education, this therapeutic foster care may be a really good fit for you. And these are both really, really needed more families in South Carolina. And once you decide, the reason that that's your first choice is because there's different agencies that license regular foster families than the agencies that license therapeutic foster families. And we are very, very clear that there is no best agency. It is simply the agency that is the best fit for your family. So you want to think about your family's needs, your motivations to foster, what are your values, and what is really going to be most helpful for you, and because there are agency options in every county that are going to help get you where you want to go. So Melissa, will you just share really quickly why Miracle Hill? Why was that a good fit for you when you got started?
Well, I had heard of Miracle Hill and the work that they do in the community, the Miracle Hill thrift stores, and I had supported Miracle Hill before I ever became a foster parent, just through their ministry to homeless people and their orphanages or group homes is what they call them, that they had at the time. And so I was familiar with them. And it just happened that when I really just made the decision that I was going to do it, that there was an informational meeting at a local church, and Miracle Help happened to be the one that was sponsoring that informational meeting, and they were there. And so I was able to talk with them and talk with the DSS representative, and it just really felt like the right fit for me, due to familiarity and knowing that they were very involved in my community already.
Yeah, and Care to Foster, we want to help you make the best fit decision for your family. And you can learn more at caretofoster.org or contact our staff, and we will happily walk through that process with you. I always say it's a head and a heart decision. You want an agency that's going to practically support you, be able to answer your questions, but also like Melissa said, just feels like a good fit. There's some sort of connection there. So we are happy to talk to you more about that. And what does the general licensing process look like? Again, that specific agency may have some variances from others, but the basic process is going to be choosing your agency and applying, scheduling some appointments, and having some home visits, some people come into your home, um, and having some inspections, lots of paperwork. But once all of that is completed, your packet is submitted, you get your license, and then you wait for that first placement. So that's the very general process, and we can talk more about that. But really, the agency is going to be the one to answer your specific detailed questions. So I'm going to let Melissa kind of answer this, but we are big proponents that you need support as a new foster parent, always as a foster parent, but especially when you're first getting started. We are better together. Foster care is challenging, and you're going to need some encouragement at the very least. So, Melissa, talk to us a little bit about the support that you kind of gathered from your community, and what are some of the things that have been most helpful?
So I said at first that I didn't really have any foster parents in my life, when I became a guardian. But as I moved towards becoming a foster parent, I had some foster parents in my church that were great to be able to ask questions, about their process. I was able to watch their family and see how things worked. So having, kind of personal connections with other foster parents have helped. I began quickly finding out about my local foster parent association and looking for information on their monthly meetings. It's hard right now because a lot of foster parent associations aren't meeting in person monthly, but Kaylee and I have found a great foster parent support group online, that I've participated in, and has really helped build those relationships. And it's all about relationships with foster parents and with other families, make connections with people that have kids in the age range that you're going to be looking to take, because when you need clothes right away, a lot of times I'll reach out to my parent friends and say, hey, who has this size that I could get started with, that could get me something right away until I can get to the store and get something else for these kids. So that has been huge, and it's been fun for me as a foster parent to bring other people along in that journey, to see their excitement. I think, sometimes anytime you do something after you get into it, you lose a little bit of the excitement sometimes. And so it's fun for me to help other foster parents through that process and to get started and to help them with the things that they need. It just kind of brings a little bit of that excitement back into it.
Yeah, I mean, and you can't be expected to do this alone. There's so much uncertainty and so much unknown. Your agency is going to be a key support, meeting other foster families, but also inviting your people along the journey with you. Having non-foster families that can say, okay, I want to be your support. I want to wrap around you and offer a meal or help with laundry, or I want to spend time with the children in your home and mentor them, or be a babysitter to give you a break. There are so many things you can do to support foster families in your area. A great place to start, like Melissa said, is with your local foster parent association. Both as a new foster parent, that's going to be a key support, but also for families that aren't quite ready to foster and just want to support the families in their area. There is so much that you can do, because
Yeah,
not
Kaylee, someone mentioned, foster closets and that kind of thing too. And that is a huge thing, it's finding out, asking those foster parents, friends, hey, are there foster closets in this area? In the upstate in Pickens and Oconee County, we have Fostering Faithfully, and they are part of that support to foster parents that provides meals when you get a new placement, or, has cribs so you don't have to go buy a crib, or have beds so you don't have to go buy a bed. And it has been a huge help to families in this area.
Because not everyone can foster, but everyone can do something. And Melissa, I want to give you a few minutes with the last of our time to talk about becoming a guardian ad litem. But like we said, become a mentor or a tutor, either formally through a program in the upstate. We've got Fostering Great Ideas that has mentoring and tutoring programs, but there are also informal ways to do that, and likely many other programs throughout South Carolina. But offering meals or just your time, talent, resources, offer to sit with someone at a doctor's appointment or a counseling visit while they wait for their child to complete those services, or to sit with them in court, or just text them some encouragement when things get hard, or when they have to say a hard goodbye. There is so much that you can do to advocate for children and to support families, even if you can't foster right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Guardian Ad Litem program, it was a great way for me to be involved, because I could be really flexible with how I was involved and how many kids I took on at one time. So every county in the state has a Guardian Ad Litem, or some counties call it CASA program. And so that person is assigned to a child to represent that child in court. So as a guardian, I met with the foster child on a monthly basis. I had access to all the records, most all the records that DSS had on the child, to see what kind of therapies they were in, to see how their medical visits were going. I could talk myself to their foster parents, to the biological parents, to their doctors. I had access to all of those things to be able, because what you're doing is you're getting to know that child and everything about them, and you're giving a separate opinion to the court of what is the best interest of this child. So it's a little bit of accountability to some of the other involvement from both the foster parent and DSS. That's outside of DSS. That program is not managed by DSS. And so it just provides another person to, really get to know that child and to speak up and be the voice of that child in court. And there's plenty of training that goes along with the Guardian Ad Litem program, just like there is in the foster care program, to teach you, how to, because there are court reports involved. But my office that I worked with was great on helping with court reports and, different people's everybody has a different level of skills and things they bring to the table. Some people are great with the kids and knowing what they need, and maybe not so good with typing and putting everything down. So they offered that kind of help to be able to provide the reports that were needed. for those kids. But it's a great program. If you don't feel like fostering something that you can do right now, it's a wonderful thing to do to be a voice for kids.
And just like there's a desperate need for foster parents, there's a desperate need for volunteer guardian ad litems in almost every county. So you could reach out to your county program to find out more about becoming a guardian. But thank you so much, Melissa, for your time today. And thank you to all of you for watching. We are so grateful that you spent a little bit of time with us this morning, and we look forward to chatting with you more. So we will see you soon. Bye. Thanks, Melissa.
Bye. You're welcome.